Yeah, well, there was a few of us at that. Yeah, I mean, that was the time where, American independent cinema. Well, we had a situation in the early '90s where this was the exciting place. I remember actually Paul got in touch with me because he was doing his big press for Boogie Nights, and like Manohla Dargis was interviewing him for the LA Weekly, and the whole subject was jumping off of me of like a director as rock star. How does that work? And out of the blue, I got this phone call, and it was like, "Hey, like I'm Paul Thomas Anderson, and we met once before. You probably don't remember, but everybody's talking to me about you and talking to me about your career, and they're talking about this and that, and it's just." They mention you so much that I think it's about time that me and you get to know each other and talk so we don't have any weirdness about it. And so we got together and we had some drinks and we became great friends ever since.
I really got a kick out of it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. And I was like, I liked the director. I thought he did a really good job and really kind of swept me up into it. And it was a fun picture. I loved Burt Reynolds in it. I thought he was excellent.
So did I.
It was so great because I've always been a big fan of his as an actor and a person and everything. I've never met the man, but I was named after him, actually.
Really?
Yeah, my mom had me when she was only 16, and she had Burt Reynolds at that time was on Gunsmoke, and he played a half-breed Indian named Quint.
Right.
And I'm 25% Indian. As much as I like Burt Reynolds, I don't want to be named Burt. All right. But it was great to actually see him carry a picture. It was great to see him in a class act film with some of that old movie star charisma. He's another guy, like we were talking about Stallone, who's a very terrific actor that got neglected.
Paul is one of my best friends, and I would say he's probably the current filmmaking artist out right now, who I consider the most a contemporary, the most a friendly competitor, and I'm glad to be making movies in the same time as Paul. I'm afraid I still have to choose Boogie Nights over There Will Be Blood. As exquisite as There Will Be Blood is, I still prefer the exuberance of Boogie Nights over the formalism of There Will Be Blood.
That whole thing in Boogie Nights where it's like, oh, everything's changing now. Now it's officially the 80s, and now they're going to stop shooting on film, and it's going to now be all digital and video, and it's talked about in Boogie Nights like it's the end of the end. It's the end of this time. This glorious time is over with. It's when the movie starts becoming a bummer. There is an interesting aspect though of working at the Pussycat Theater when they were showing these films on film, and the ones that, and it's like everything is, it's about ready to turn into home video. It's about everything is going to turn into Swedish Erotica Volume 1 through 36, and everything's going to be like that. But when I'm still there, it's still the 70s porno. It's still the 70s porno stars. Annette Haven, they're still kind of the big stars. Vanessa Del Rio, they're kind of the big stars. They haven't been turned over to the Shauna Grants of the world and the Tracy Lords of the world. They haven't shown up yet. Well, I actually, I think Burt Reynolds is fantastic in the movie. Me and Paul have talked about this, though. I mean, I think there's a slight flaw in Boogie Nights, and the flaw in Boogie Nights is the perception of the Burt Reynolds character. And what I mean by that is this. Paul can say he's not based on the director Gerard Damiano, who directed Devil and Mrs. Jones and Deep Throat. He is. He obviously is. He looks exactly like him. And Gerard Damiano has a very unique look. So you have to actually make him, Burt Reynolds doesn't look like that. So you actually have to go out of your way to make him look like Gerard Damiano with the gray and black Van Dyke that he wore and the kind of wavy gray hair that he wore. That's not Burt Reynolds' look. That is Gerard Damiano's look. So he went out of his way to make the guy look like his exact double. So you can't say, I didn't mean to be that guy. Yes, he did. Here's my problem with the film, though. Yes, I do think it's honest about being a filmmaker. But my problem with it, though, is when he makes the cop movie, the porno cop movie, and he's killing himself doing it, and then you see the film looks like a piece of shit. It looks horrible. Now, believe me, I've seen more porno movies than Paul have because I worked at the porno theater. All right. And I saw a lot of movies crappy like that. But he has the Burt Reynolds character say, I think, he says it in the full on moving the close up in him. I think this is my greatest work yet.
This is the best work we've ever done.
I think this is my finest work yet. Gerard Damiano was a better director than that. Gerard Damiano's better footage looked drastically better than that cop crap. Yes, exactly. Gerard Damiano was a good enough filmmaker to know the difference between, oh, wow, this is the best movie I've ever done, and no, this one has a little bit of a story. But we still shot it on 16 millimeter, in crappy daylight with no light, and it looks like what it looks like. Burt Reynolds suggests that he's more of a director than that he would know the difference. Gerard Damiano definitely would know the difference, and he's playing Gerard Damiano. So I think it's a cheap line because that character would know that work is not the best work he could possibly do. Yeah, you can definitely lose perspective, but you don't think some piece of junk that you did is the best work you've ever going to do.
Hello, this is Tarantino Takes Over Sky Movies. I'm your host, Quentin Tarantino. And the movie I chose for tonight is Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. I think There Will Be Blood is definitely one of the best movies made in this last decade. And I couldn't be prouder of saying that. The thing about There Will Be Blood that, aside from the obvious things like Daniel Day-Lewis's towering performance, one of the things that struck me after I saw the film, which, by the way, if ever there's a movie that demands to be seen twice, if not more, but definitely it needs to be seen twice before you can really have an intelligent discussion about it, it would be There Will Be Blood. It's so overpowering that really to truly try to talk about There Will Be Blood even a few days after seeing it, probably would amount to gibberish until you've seen it a second time. But I did try to talk to Paul about it that very night after I had seen it. And one of the things I said to him is, Paul is a very cinematic director, and like me, he enjoys indulging in set pieces. And the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, there was really no cinematic set pieces in the movie, and Paul was, oh, well, thank you, Quentin. I take that as a compliment. I go, well, maybe the putting out of the fire, maybe. He goes, well, if there is one, I guess maybe that would be it, as Paul replied. Well, then I saw the film again, and I was completely wrong. The putting out of the oil fire is absolutely positively a set piece. It's a brilliant cinematic set piece. From the time that the oil derrick explodes and to the time that the soundtrack kicks in, which is, by the way, I think one of the most modern, was one of the great modern original soundtracks, to be done of this last decade. But once that music kicks in and you see Longview running with a little boy, then it's on. That is a cinematic set piece. It's just different from the set pieces he indulged in both Boogie Nights and Magnolia. Yeah, there's been so many things already said about Daniel Day-Lewis's performance that I won't just add any more vomitive praise upon it, because there are facts. Water is wet, the sun is hot, and Daniel Day-Lewis in this film is great. I will point out one little tiny thing, though, that's very interesting, is just a little nuance. The opening 20 minutes of the movie, which is, more or less silent, is actually quite terrific. But one of the things to take in is when Daniel Day-Lewis's character breaks his leg in the mine and finds the gold. Look at that surrounding, the surrounding landscape around him. Those rocks. It seems like he's out in the middle of nowhere, and it doesn't show his journey back to town. But that journey back to town literally would would be a movie unto itself, similar almost to the Richard Harris movie Man in the Wilderness. Because literally, he's got a broken leg. He would have to actually, through those rocks, actually have to drug himself by his elbows miles and miles through the roughest terrain you can imagine until he finally got to the town and actually sought medical care while having to actually leave the gold that he found. That's not a contrivance. That's not a misstep. Daniel Day-Lewis's performance so embodies the character that you can imagine he did just that. And also, as much of a bastard as this man proves himself to be, that courage that it would have taken to do that actually gives him the heroic right for almost everything that he does throughout the rest of the movie. He went through hell to get this fortune. He is not just a blood-sucking businessman, even though the film does work very wonderfully as not even a metaphor, as text for the beginning of capitalism in the industrial age. But the fact that the man actually would be able to accomplish such an act almost gives him the right for everything that follows down the line. And the fact that Paul didn't need to show it. You have to make that movie into yourself, I think is actually quite profound. Not only that, if you actually even jump to the next scene, which would be the scene where he's laid out on the floor, his leg in a splint, him sitting on some sort of a stretcher, and they're counting the gold dust on the scales. Look at Daniel Day-Lewis. Even having gone through all that and laying flat on the floor in a stretcher, he's still keeping an eye on him, He's not that happy about these guys touching his gold. He's making sure that nobody gets swifty fingers here. And it plays lovely. If I had a criticism about the film, it would fall to Paul Dano's performance. Not that the performance is bad. There's nothing bad about it. It's just it does seem a compromise. He's just not in the level and the caliber of Daniel Day-Lewis. And if the two characters are meant to be combats throughout the film, then Daniel Day-Lewis is Muhammad Ali and Paul Dano is Jerry Quarry. And it is what it is. I have to say that the relationship I enjoy with Paul is probably my most cherished relationship that I have with another filmmaker. We are very friendly combatants. The way we look at it is we have a Marlon Brando, Montgomery Cliff like relationship. I feel I'm Marlon Brando, Paul's Montgomery Cliff. And the reality is, Brando was better because Montgomery Cliff existed. And Montgomery Cliff was better because Brando existed. And nothing makes me happier than for Paul to come out with a masterpiece like There Will Be Blood. And nothing makes me happier. I couldn't be more pleased for him, proud of him, and nothing inspires me more to do better. So I can actually say, while there is no thematic link to my new movie, Inglourious Bastards, with There Will Be Blood, if I reach high points with Inglourious Bastards, it is partly because Paul came out with There Will Be Blood a couple years ago, and I realized I had to bring up my game.